The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. Very much. Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. Yes, last minute problems, technical issues, but we're over them. Thank you for joining me. I'm doing this live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. It's a pleasure to be back talking about the news, but not really a pleasure this morning because I've got some bad news for you. This is absolutely astounding, and there's real video of this. It's a verified video, shows Air India plane descending the moment it crashed. This is absolutely shocking.
Did you know that Sensodyne now has a clinical range of toothpaste where you can both whiten your teeth, 2 shades, and also get sensitivity protection? It's just properly formulated from a dentist's perspective. It's something that I've recommended to my patients.
Okay, here's the... This is a plane landing. Excuse me. The BBC recorded this. There's actually probably better footage of that. We might have that for you later, but I wanted you to see that, and it's absolutely astounding. This is how news is created, and but I wanted you to see this because there are people out there suggesting that Pure Poly have just discovered that there's a conflict of interest with the public safety minister. Actually, it's not breaking news for YouTubers out there who think it's breaking. This is 4 days old.
Minister Ananda Sangari says that he'll have to recuse himself from any decisions based on the national security decisions related to the Tamil community. Are you concerned about a public safety minister who can't make decisions about that area?
I just learned of this afternoon, and I'd like to take a little more time to hear what he has said and what screen he's put in place before I offer a comment.
And guess what? He still hasn't offered a comment on this, which is absolutely incredible. And you know why? Why not? I can't explain it. I can't really understand why there's been absolutely no comment on this. But here's something that's even more astounding.
Listen to Minister of Finance going to be using taxpayer dollars to travel out of the country this week?
Yeah. First of all, I'm happy to say hello to my colleague. He was my critic when I was a young man, Mr. Speaker, when I started in this House, and now I see that 10 years after, I still have the pleasure to have to answer his question. He comes from a great region. My dad lives next to his.
Agro West.
Is the Minister of Financing planning on traveling to the Bilderberg meetings this week using taxpayer dollars?
The Honourable Minister.
I'm very proud to answer questions from my colleague. Like I said, he comes from a great...
Okay, these people cannot answer questions. It takes 5 or 6 attempts to get any kind of response from a Liberal minister. And this is one of the weakest Liberal ministers who Mark Carney has put into one of the most important jobs in the cabinet, finance minister. This guy, I mean, let's face it. You remember him when he was what? I think he was the industry minister at one time, and he was quite inadequate at that. He was a technology minister. Now he's the finance minister, basically number 2 in the cabinet after the prime minister. And people keep saying to me, why does Mark Carney keep appointing, or why, excuse me, appoint so many incompetent people to his cabinet? It's because he likes it that way. So he is the cabinet. He's a cabinet of one. It's Mark Carney all the way. So, I mean, listen to this. So instead of getting a budget together, a spring budget, champagne is going to one of the most conspiratorial, most secretive groups in the world. This means this cabinet, this government is sold out to the globalists. Let's listen to him continue to
region where my family is also, and so I've seen him in action, and it's great to see that they can.
For Niagara West.
I just want to ask the finance minister why he believes that he should spend time at the Bilderberg meetings rather than actually tabling the budget.
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm so glad to see my colleague is actually following, paying so much attention about what I do. I travel to Shawinigan also every weekend, Mr. Speaker, and I would be glad to invite him at home as well because he seems to be very interested where I'm going.
Yeah, Champagne, we're very interested to see where you're going, especially when it's to the Bilderberg Society. These people don't take notes, or at least notes that can be published. They're highly secretive meetings. They're more secretive than a Masonic Lodge convention. These guys get together and they plot world finance. They plot what they're going to do to influence governments around the world. If you're a member of the Bilderberg Society, you're a member of the inner circle, the globalist circle. Now, I didn't think they'd take a guy like Champagne, actually, because he doesn't strike me as even vaguely competent. But apparently, he is a high-ranking official in the Bilderberg, because you wouldn't be going to this meeting if you weren't. This is the same group that, yes, Stephen Harper attended a meeting once, and he got a lot of flack for that. Henry Kissinger was a lifelong member of the Bilderbergs. So I've been talking for the last week and a half about how Pierre Poilievre has got a new image. It's like this personality makeover. He's doing the Mayor Tommy Shanks routine every day on his videos. It's a fireside chat. And I've been, shall we say, indifferent about it. I think it's maybe a good idea because he's focused entirely upon his by-election, which I hasten to add, is going to be a hell of a difficult time for him because the riding he's in is rural Alberta. And rural Alberta is heavily in support of Alberta independence. You know, and the United Conservative Party, led by Daniel Smith, Premier Daniel Smith, is also heavily supporting independence. So it's a problem when you've got a premier who's federalist and you've got a MP, potential MP, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, who's also federalist, running in a highly separatist riding. It's going to be interesting. And Danielle Smith will be on the show tomorrow. Actually, I'm interviewing her this afternoon. I'm going to play that interview for you first thing tomorrow morning. I'm going to ask Danielle Smith, an old friend, and I have nothing but the highest regard for Premier Smith. I think she's the best premier in Canada, without any real competition, of course, but she is damn good at what she does. She was a great journalist. She's an even better premier. And I'll be talking to Danielle this afternoon. That interview will be on tomorrow. Don't miss it. And I'll be asking her questions about how is she coping with the rising tide of separatism in Alberta? What is the Alberta Accord? How is she meeting the challenges? I hate to use that word, but in this case, this context, I'll use it. How is she meeting the challenges that Alberta faces right now? What does she think about Mark Carney? Does she think Carney is worth a shot? Or does she think he is putting us on? I'm going to be asking her that. However, get back to Pierre Poilievre. There's people out there who say his job is on the line. I don't think so, because there's nobody else in the Conservative caucus, at least, who can do the job even half as well. I'm not going to say, yep, sorry, we lost contact there for a second. But Pierre Poilievre is doing as good a job as anybody else could do, and much better. However, folks, I've got to say this. I'm not sure the personality makeover is working for him. I'm not sure it's necessarily a good idea. And let's listen to Nick Nanos, who's generally accurate in his polling. You know, like I said, I like other pollsters a little bit better, but Nick Nanos says it's not working, folks. And I know there are forces within the Conservative Party that are trying to move Pierre Poilievre to the left. They want to move him to the left because they think that's going to somehow sabotage the Liberals. That's going to upset the Liberal cart. No, two Liberal parties in Canada is two parties too many. We don't need another Liberal party in Canada. We need a truly principled Conservative party, and he's got to work on that. When Pierre Poilievre talks about a government that minds its own business, I get excited. And I know you do too. When you hear about Pierre Poilievre saying, get the government out of our lives, stop standing in front of pride parades and pride flag raising ceremonies, get out of my life. That's when Poilievre does best. But Nick Nanos is issuing a warning.
Conservatives are down 10 points. Do you have any concerns about that? Conservatives are down 10 points according to a Nanos poll. Any concerns? A new poll shows the Conservatives are down 10 points. Are you having any concerns about that? The Conservatives are down 10 points in a Nanos poll. Do you have any concerns about the Conservatives being down 10 points in the Nanos poll? Do you have any comment on that?
I just got a call.
What do you think about this poll?
Jess rang. It's on silent. I know, it's worst timing.
It didn't even ring. I'm so surprised.
It's on silent, but I felt it.
That might be the funniest clip I've ever seen on our show. That's Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer getting asked from our own producer Rachel Haynes about some new numbers from our pollster of record, Nick Nanos. The latest Nano research ballot tracking has the Tories 10 points behind the Liberals. And Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has just over half the support of Mark Carney when Canadians surveyed are asked to pick their preferred prime minister. It's a jarring turn for a party that ended the election neck and neck with the Liberals. Here to unpack those new numbers is Nick Nanos himself. He's the founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research. Hi, Nick. Good to see you.
Hey, Vashi.
That was a great clip. I can't get over it. Andrew Scheer pretending to be on the phone because you don't want to talk about your numbers. So let's get into this, because the last time we spoke just a few weeks ago, you were making the point like, wow, they're still very close. They were like within a point in the few weeks that followed the election of each other. There didn't appear to be some big honeymoon for Prime Minister Mark Carney. What changed?
Well, actually, what we're seeing is the Carney government in motion to one extent or another, and Pierre Poilievre not being in the news as much as he has. You know, I don't think we can underestimate the disadvantage that he is at, because he's not in the House of Commons. He does not have that platform. And, you know, it doesn't matter whether you like or dislike the guy. Pierre Poilievre is an effective parliamentarian. That's why he's kind of built up his brand over the last number of years. And, you know, he's not there. He's not on the front line. And, you know, let's face it, who's on TV? Scheer is on TV, not Poilievre. And, you know, the thing is what's clear now, at least when we look at the tracking, you know, Pierre Poilievre is now 25 points back of Mark Carney when it comes to who Canadians would prefer as prime minister. And put this in context, Carney's up a little bit.
Okay, I know a lot of you are watching this and saying, that can't be true. There's no way that Mark Carney is at 50.6% as preferred prime minister and Pierre Poilievre is at 26.1%. Ask yourself this. Did Mark Carney win the last election? Yes. Was there some funny business going on? Probably. But not so much funny business that he didn't win the election. And that's because we have a lot of really stupid voters in this country. I hate to say it, but it's true. We have people who are totally taken in by Mark Carney's act, and they continue to be taken in by Mark Carney's act. A lot of the people being taken in by Mark Carney's act are so-called conservatives, small c conservatives, small l libertarians perhaps, who are supporting Mark Carney because they think, hey, this guy is just like Pierre Poilievre, except he knows a bit more.
But Pierre Poilievre is down significantly on the preferred prime minister tracking.
And let me ask you, you referenced this a little bit, but is that mostly from your perspective like a question of relevance versus a question of judgment? Like, is it necessarily people saying I don't like or what he's saying, or is it more just that I'm not listening to it the way I was a few months ago because they were so...
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's not in the news.
Right.
Right? And
so
he doesn't have the platform, right? And, you know, the thing is, you know, the interesting thing is during the election campaign, you know, even though during the election campaign he did trail Mark Carney when it came to the preferred prime minister tracking, he was much more competitive. And you know, maybe the message for Pierre Poilievre is, if you want to be competitive, get in the news, be proactive, and be that counterpoint. And you know, for Andrew Scheer, he's got to cede the territory and the response to the government more to Pierre Poilievre, because, you know, Pierre Poilievre is not in the House. He's going to go to a by-election. You know, Canadians will be wondering not whether he can win the by-election, which he will win the by-election. It's, can he be competitive with Mark Carney? And Carney right now is a political steamroller.
It is interesting, though, because I will say, like, Mr. Poilievre is doing a lot of press conferences. It's just a different dynamic in the House, as you point out. Like there really isn't, there's no substitute for, especially because of his own performance there, which was like a big part of his persona. There's no real substitute for getting him in there.
And, this was part of the Liberal strategy. The Liberal strategy during the campaign was, steal all the policies from the Conservatives. Right. And run on personality and experience,
right?
And we're still seeing that with a government that is focused on business, focused on the economy, focused on jobs.
I would say Nick Nanos is right to a point. They stole the names of the policies, but they're not the same policies. When Mark Carney talks about safe streets and safe communities, he's not talking about people living in their own home with no crime occurring on the streets. Mark Carney's talking about people living in affordable housing, which means Soviet-style housing or slums, and not being allowed on those safe streets because there's a lockdown in process. That's what that means to Mark Carney. So he's using the same verbiage, he's using the same vocabulary, but it means vastly different things.
A Liberal government that wants to build pipelines, right, and is committed to energy projects. And
you close your eyes, you kind of feel like you're hearing a Conservative government at times.
So Pierre Poilievre not only has to get back more in the news and to be proactive, he needs to somehow define himself as different and relevant to the national dialogue. So what is he bringing to the table on that front?
And what about the timing of this? Again, like I go back to my original question to you, which was like, there were weeks after the election where that impact wasn't felt, where they were still neck and neck. Is it something about the throne speech, the king's arrival, that cemented things for Carney?
I think there was a bit of a period right after the election where, not a lot was happening. But you go from the throne speech, and then you go to the premier's meeting, the meeting with the premiers, where, did any of the premiers say anything negative about the Prime Minister? Like Doug Ford?
No, they gushed.
All of them gushed, including the Premier of Alberta, the Conservative Premier of Nova Scotia.
She didn't gush, let's say, but she wasn't mad.
No, but so you have leading Conservatives, people who are leading individuals in the Conservative movement and party in Canada, actually saying nice things about Mark.
And I can't believe how Nick Nanos is echoing everything I have been saying for the past couple of weeks. Exactly. Mark Carney presents himself with the spirit of bonhomie. He's everybody's best friend. He loves all the premiers love him. Now, Danielle Smith is keeping her cards close. However, she's really not in the attack mode right now. So what is the result? It looks like everybody loves Mark Carney. And I've been saying this. Even though he's been appointing incompetence to his cabinet, I don't think people were that impressed with bringing King Charles over to read a throne speech that included a little piece of it saying that the site, the land that the House of Commons is sitting on is still unceded to the Algonquin First Nations tribe. Sorry, that was a blunder. He's made other blunders, but he's getting away with it.
Carney, that's not good for Pierre Poilievre.
So just to be fair here, we're at a very early point in this government, and in particular, we were talking earlier in the show about the prospect of a deal with the Americans, and what if that crisis fades? Plus, all the stuff he's announcing will kind of come home to roost. At some point in the budget, we're actually going to see how this stuff will be implemented. It will be a much different sense, I think, of accountability. What do you think of that timeline? And you also have some evidence that the Trump thing is not as big a deal to people anymore.
Yeah, the focus on the concern about Trump and the U.S. relations has been on the decline. But you know what, Vashi? We looked at remember the polling numbers before Christmas? We thought this was over, and we were talking about, Pierre Poilievre measuring the drapes for 24 Sussex. Well, I think it's a little too early to count Pierre Poilievre out. But, for Mark Carney, the one thing about Mark Carney is that there are very high expectations for him. Canadians want to see action. The polling suggests that he probably has until Christmas to deliver. And if he doesn't deliver by Christmas, the numbers could turn. And, even just to prove.
And I tell you, folks, he's going to deliver by Christmas, but it's not going to be the package you're expecting in the mail. Mark Carney will deliver on his globalist agenda. He will deliver on devaluing the Canadian and U.S. dollars. He will deliver on increased surveillance. And this, of course, is something we're not hearing anything from Pierre Poilievre about. Remember this? Here, we've got to show you this. Here.
What do you make of the border security? What do you make of the border?
One thing I should say, she's absolutely right. We need to get the money back for taxpayers.
What do you make of the border security bill that was tabled last week, Bill C2? You haven't offered your views on it. Can you give us?
Well, we support a stronger border. We want severe limits on population growth to reverse the damage the Liberals did to our system. The population has been growing out of control. Our borders have been left wide open. This has caused the free flow of drugs, human trafficking, illegal migration, and much worse. And that is why we want a stronger border. We want to crack down on abuses in the immigration system, and we want to ensure that that any frauds in the refugee system are reversed. Those are the things we're looking at. But we're also going to study the bill carefully to make sure that long-standing Canadians who are following the law are not having their rights and freedoms violated.
Okay, we know the Conservative Party and we know Pierre Poilievre is for a stronger border. You tell me you haven't read the whole bill? Every day we're hearing criticism of Bill C2 as a clear and present danger to our democracy, as an existential threat to our freedom of assembly and free speech. Here we go. I invite you to, if you're feeling upset about Bill C2, go to the store. You can get stickers to advertise exactly how upset you are. But this and they are going to use this. They're going to use any crisis they can to lock us down, to take away our freedom of speech, our freedom of assembly, and bring us back to the COVID experience. That's what Mark Carney is trying to do. And that's what he's going to deliver by Christmas. Why is Pierre Poilievre not speaking out against this bill? There is no excuse. And I'll continue to say this on this show. When all I get from Pierre Poilievre, well, we'll have to have a closer look at that part of the bill. I'm not going to comment on the not good enough. Sorry, not good enough. This bill could end our basic freedom in this country. That's what this bill is all about. It's talking about opening letters without a warrant from the RCMP and Canada Post, massive internet surveillance, your email, your text messages, broadcasts like this. Everything, because it's all about organized crime and stopping money laundering. So to stop money laundering and to fight organized crime, we're going to take everybody's rights away. No, that's not going to do it. That's not going to work. And organized crime is already always two steps ahead of law enforcement and the government. So it's completely non-existent in any effect in power. I can't emphasize that enough. This is a danger. Poilievre has got to do better on this one. And listen to John Carpay, who I'm going to have on the show next week to discuss this bill.
2, the Strong Borders Act should be named the Strong Surveillance Act. It empowers police to intercept mail and gives new powers to Canada Post to open mail, thereby repudiating a 157-year-old Canadian tradition dating back to Confederation of respecting the privacy of Canadians when they mail a letter or parcel. Police are going to get new powers to demand that providers of electronic services, and that could be social media platforms, to turn over a list of their subscribers and where their subscribers live. This is terrifying, tyrannical, totalitarian legislation. I want to focus in particularly on the criminalization of the use of cash. If Bill C2 passes in its current form, it will become illegal for Canadians to donate $10,000 cash to a charity or to make purchases of $10,000 or more using cash. Now, of course, one could rightly point out that there's not too many Canadians that are using cash in the amounts of $10,000 to donate to charities or to make purchases. But once this is in the criminal code, it's very, very easy for government to say, well, we're going to change the 10,000 limit to 5,000. We're going to change the 5,000 limit to 1,000. And before you know it, it'll be illegal to use more than $100 worth of cash. Cash protects our privacy and our autonomy, protects us from surveillance by government and surveillance by banks, credit card companies, and other institutions. Cash is one of the pillars of the free society. We need to fight to defend it. Contact your member of parliament and urge him or her to oppose Bill C2.
John Carpe, the Justice Foundation, Constitutional Freedoms, Justice Foundation for Constitutional Freedoms. He's been on the show in the past. He'll be on the show again next week to talk about this. I would go one up on that. Don't just call or write or email or text your MP. Get a hold of Pierre Poilievre and saying, where the hell are you on this? Where are you on this issue? Do you want us to be subservient to the government to this extent? Whatever happened to the mind your own business government you once talked about when you were interviewed by Rex? That was one of the best interviews you ever did. We miss him. Rest in peace, Rex. That was one of the best interviews you ever did. And what happened to that attitude of mind your own business? That's where we've got to get back to. So remind Pierre Poilievre that he needs to take a stand on Bill C2, because saying I'm going to read it sometime doesn't cut it. Not with me. It doesn't cut it with you. I know that. Now, Mark Carney, of course, was raising the pride flag yesterday. Or actually, I think he did it on Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday. It's Thursday, isn't it? He was raising the pride flag, even though last year, thanks to my friend Camille El-Sheikh and his work on behalf of children in schools, the pride flag was made a symbol of government overreach and a symbol of something we don't want to touch. Because Camille was successful in getting the flag not being raised and 50% non-participation in 50% of the schools across Canada. So Mark Carney can talk about this like it's a symbol of freedom, but it's not. It's a symbol of oppression. And I'll tell you right now, I'm somebody who believes in equality under the law. No matter who you are, you're equal under the law. I'm a live and let live person. But don't start getting taxpayer dollars to promote your lifestyle. This is way beyond tolerance and acceptance. This is promotion of a lifestyle I happen to disagree with. But that's my opinion. That's my business. I don't impose that on anybody else. However, they're imposing their opinions, their lifestyle on me because they're taking taxpayer money. Let's hear what Mia Hughes has to say.
If you make the truth whatever I say it is, then it means that whoever has the power to define truth will assert their own way of seeing the world, when truth is not tethered to reality. And Canada has been in that world for 10 years, where people with serious psychiatric problems, paraphilic desires, and an anti-reality way of thinking have been the ones who have asserted what is true. And we're here right now to see the raising of the flag that symbolizes that. But I do think that, as I said on the way in here, their days are numbered. The backlash that Carney was talking about, it's real, and they're not going to stop it because they've done so much harm to so many people in society, not just children, but women, LGB, ironically. The backlash is going to continue. It's going to get stronger, and eventually we won't have this flag being raised on Parliament Hill.
Mia is quite correct. The day will come when this will be seen as not just passé, but toxic, because it is. You cannot have every sexual flavor in this club and not end up offending somebody, including members of the club. And that's what she meant. Gays and lesbians are being attacked by transgendered people. And it just goes on and on and on. It's become a broad swath of every form of sexual flavor deviancy. And it's time to say enough. Enough of this promotion. Live your life and stop insisting other people adopt your values, because I ain't doing it and you're not doing it. I'll be back in a minute with my concluding remarks. Let's have a look at this. Have you had enough? I have. I've had enough already. It didn't take much of Mark Carney because I predicted this was where we would be after a couple of weeks of Mark Carney as Prime Minister. We've had a couple of months now. We're April, May, June. Yes, at the end of this month, it's going to be 2 months of Mark Carney as an elected Prime Minister. 2 months too long. It's been a difficult time. I think we all agree with that. Don't miss tomorrow's show. We're going to be talking, as I said, to Premier Danielle Smith about the issues that really matter and about where this country is going, where Alberta is going. This is going to be a great conversation. We've had her on the past. As I said, it's always a pleasure and an honor to have the great Premier of Alberta on this show. Danielle Smith, good friend of this show. She's a good friend of freedom. And I'm there to have her on at any time she wants to be on this show. Thanks for watching today, folks. It's been a pleasure to be with you. I'll be back again tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and I've been coming at you live from Ottawa. This has been David Creighton, and I'll be back again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Be there.